The Valith had ruled the stars for 12 million years. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds, and they believed they understood everything about life in the galaxy. They had studied every species they found. Some they conquered, some they enslaved, and some they simply watched, waiting until the time was right to take what they wanted. When their long-range sensors first detected Earth, they were not impressed. The small blue planet orbited an ordinary yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The creatures living there were soft, weak, and short-lived. A Valith could live for 3,000 years. A human barely made it past 100. The Valith had armor-like skin that could stop a blade. Humans bled if they scraped their knees. But the Valith were scientists above all else. They collected data on everything. And humans presented a puzzle they could not solve. The reports from their observation drones made no sense. A human mother had lifted a vehicle that weighed 2,000 kilograms to save her trapped child. A human soldier had walked 12 kilometers on a broken leg to reach his wounded friends. A human woman had survived alone in frozen mountains for 47 days with almost no food. These things should not be possible. The Valith had calculated human physical limits with perfect accuracy. Yet humans kept breaking those limits. Dr. Salith was the finest researcher in the Valith Dominion. She had spent her career unlocking the secrets of alien biology. When the High Council gave her permission to study humans directly, she felt something close to excitement. This was the mystery she had waited her whole life to solve. Her research station. The Eternal Meridian hung in orbit above a gas giant far from Earth. It was the most advanced laboratory ever built. And soon, it would hold its most interesting subjects. The collection teams worked quickly and quietly. They took humans from remote places where they would not be missed. A fisherman from a small island, a hiker lost in vast mountains, a family traveling through empty desert. In 3 months, Salith had 47 specimens. She kept them in comfortable cells. The Valith were not cruel by nature. They simply did not think of other species as equals. To Salith, the humans were fascinating animals, nothing more. The experiments began slowly. Salith measured everything. Heart rates, brain activity, hormone levels. She put the humans through stress tests, carefully increasing the difficulty while monitoring their bodies for changes. She wanted to find the biological switch that let humans exceed their limits. What she found instead was something she did not expect. The humans were weak alone. Separated from each other, they became sad and frightened. Their test results were ordinary, but when Salith allowed them to interact, everything changed. A man named Marcus Cole emerged as their leader. He was not the strongest or the smartest among them. He had been a firefighter on Earth, a man whose job was running into danger to save others. In the cells of the Eternal Meridian, he did the same thing. He organized the other humans. He made sure everyone ate. He sat with those who cried in the night and told them stories about Earth, till they fell asleep. Salith watched him with growing fascination. Marcus had no hope of escape. He had no weapons, no power, no way to fight back. Yet he acted as if victory was certain. He acted as if taking care of his people was the most important thing in the universe. The test results changed when the humans were together. Their stress hormones dropped. Their heart rates synchronized. They performed better on every test, as if the presence of others made them physically stronger, Salith wrote in her notes. Specimen resilience increases in group settings. Mechanism unknown. Recommend isolation protocols. Separated them. Put each human in a cell alone, with no way to see or hear the others. It did not work. Within 2 days, the humans had found ways to communicate. They tapped on the walls in patterns. They sang songs, their voices carrying through the ventilation shafts. They scratched messages into their food trays and passed them during meal collection. Salith added more barriers. The humans adapted. She blocked the vents. They found new methods, no matter what she did. They refused to be truly alone, and then the anomaly started. A young woman named Yara was one of the quieter specimens. She had been a university student on Earth, studying ancient history. She did not complain or cause trouble. But during one stress test, her heart stopped beating. For 9 seconds, Yara was dead. The medical systems brought her back. Her heart started again, and she gasped for air, alive and confused. But in those 9 seconds, something strange happened. The lights flickered. Not just in the medical bay, but across 17 decks of the station. Power systems that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly experienced unexplained surges. The Bailiff engineers found nothing wrong. They blamed old wiring. They blamed cosmic radiation. They blamed anything except the obvious answer, because the obvious answer was impossible. The surge had come from Yara. Salith reviewed the data again and again. At the exact moment of Yara's heart failure, her brain had produced an energy pattern the Velith had never seen before. It lasted only a fraction of a second. It should not have been powerful enough to affect anything outside her skull. Yet 17 decks had lost power. Salith told herself it was coincidence. She almost believed it, but she could not stop thinking about the old stories. Every Valith child learned about the ancient ruins scattered across dead galaxies. Structures made of unknown materials, covered in symbols no one could read, built by someone or something billions of years before the Valith. Existed the energy pattern from Yara's brain, matched the energy signatures found in those ruins. It was impossible. Humans were primitive. They had only left their planet a handful of times. They could not possibly be connected to something so ancient. In his cell, Marcus Cole pressed his hand against the cold wall. He could feel the others out there, even though he could not see them. He could feel their fear, their hope, their determination to survive. And lately, he had started to feel something else. Something vast and patient, like an ocean waiting just beneath the surface of his mind. He did not know what it was. None of them did. But deep in the bones of the Eternal Meridian, in systems the Valith had never known existed, something ancient was beginning to wake. It had been sleeping for a very long time, and it remembered. Everything Salith could not sleep. For the first time in her 300 years of life, her mind would not rest. The data from Yara's test filled her thoughts. She had run the analysis 100 times. The answer was always the same. The energy pattern that came from the human girl's brain matched signatures found in ruins that existed before the Valith were born, before their sun had formed, before the galaxy itself had finished taking shape. It was impossible. And yet, the data did not lie. She needed to understand. She needed to push harder. The High Council was growing impatient. They had given Salith enormous resources for this project, and they expected results. Other researchers whispered that she was wasting time on primitive creatures. They said humans were nothing special. It's just another weak species in a galaxy full of weak species. Salith would prove them wrong. She designed new tests, harder tests. She would push the humans to the very edge of what their bodies could survive. And she would watch their brains at the moment of maximum stress. If Yara had produced that strange energy pattern once, perhaps others could produce it too. The tests began. The humans suffered. Salith pushed them through extreme temperatures. She subjected them to pressure changes that made their ears bleed. She forced them to solve problems while their bodies screamed for rest. And she watched. One by one, the same pattern appeared. Not in every human, and not every time. But when a human reached the absolute limit of their endurance, when their body told them they could not continue, something strange happened. Their neural activity shifted into configurations the Valith had never recorded in any species. The patterns were complex. They folded back on themselves like spirals within spirals. They should not have been possible in a brain made of ordinary biological matter, and every single pattern matched. The energy signatures from the ancient ruins. Salith locked herself in the archive chamber and searched through records that had been sealed for 10,000 years. She found references to other experiments, conducted long ago on other species. The Valith had tested the limits of many creatures over their long history. Most of those experiments had been forgotten, but a few had been classified at the highest level and buried, where no one would find them. Salith found them, 3 million years ago. Valith scientists had experimented on a species called the Neth. The Neth were gentle beings, builders of beautiful cities. Lovers of music and art, the Valith had taken some of them for study. The experiments ended suddenly. All records were destroyed. The entire Neth species was exterminated within a single year. The reason was listed in a single line: unexplained gravitational phenomena during stress testing. Containment deemed impossible. Salith found 4 more examples. For more species, all from the same region of the galaxy, all experimented on. All destroyed Earth was in that same region. She sat alone in the archive chamber, surrounded by the ghosts of dead civilizations. Her hands trembled. For the first time in her life, she felt something she did not recognize: fear. Back in the holding cells, Marcus Cole was changing. He could not explain it to the others. He could barely explain it to himself. But ever since Yara's heart had stopped, something was different inside him. The walls of his cell felt thinner. The distance between him and the other humans felt smaller. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could sense where they were without looking. It was not just him. Alina, who had been a schoolteacher in Argentina, told him she had started dreaming of places she had never seen. Cities made of light. Stars being born. A vast presence watching over everything, like a parent watching sleeping children. Young Tommy, who was only 16 years old and missed his mother terribly, said he could sometimes guess what the guards were going to do before they did it. At first he thought it was just luck, but he was right too often for it to be luck. And Yara had not spoken much since her heart stopped. But her eyes had changed. There was something ancient in them now, something patient. One night, Marcus woke from a dream he could not remember. His heart was pounding. His skin was covered in sweat. And he knew with absolute certainty that something was coming. He pressed his hand against the wall of his cell. In his mind, he reached out to the others. They were all awake. They had all felt it too. Salith did not know about these changes. She was too focused on her own questions. The High Council was demanding answers. She was running out of time to provide them. She made a decision that would change everything if individual tests produced the strange energy patterns sometimes. Then perhaps a group test would produce something stronger. She ordered all 47 humans brought to the main testing chamber at the same time. She would subject them to maximum stress simultaneously and record whatever happened. Her assistants tried to warn her. The safety systems might not handle the load. The equipment might be damaged. But Salith did not listen. She had spent her entire career searching for something that would make her name live forever. This was it. The humans were brought to the chamber. They stood in a circle, facing each other, connected to machines that measured everything about their bodies. They held hands without being told to. It felt right. Marcus looked at the others. At Alina with her kind eyes. At Tommy, who was trying so hard to be brave. At Yara, who seemed to be listening to something no one else could hear. He squeezed the hands he was holding. "Whatever happens," he said, "we stay together." The machine started. The stress tests began at the lowest level and climbed steadily higher. Pain, pressure, fear. The humans felt all of it. Their hearts raced. Their muscles burned. Their minds screamed for relief, but they did not let go. Of each other's hands, Salith watched the monitors with growing excitement. The energy patterns were appearing in every human at once. They were not just matching the ancient signatures anymore. They were amplifying each other, growing stronger with every second. The lights in the chamber began to flicker. Then the lights on the deck below them flickered. Then the lights across the entire station flickered. An alarm sounded. Power systems were overloading across every section of the Eternal Meridian. Engineers shouted in confusion. Nothing was damaged. Nothing was wrong with the equipment. The energy was coming from somewhere else. It was coming from the humans in the testing chamber. Marcus felt something break open inside him. Not his body. Something deeper. Something that had been locked away for so long that he had forgotten it existed. Light poured out of him. Out of all of them, and then everything went dark. When emergency power finally returned, the station was silent. Salith stared at her destroyed instruments, at the unconscious humans lying in a circle on the floor. They were still alive. All of them, but they were not the same anymore, and neither was she. Salith stood in the ruined testing chamber and tried to understand. What had happened? Every instrument was destroyed. Screens were cracked. Sensors had melted. The walls themselves had changed color, shifting from standard gray to something that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. The energy surge had not come from the power grid or from any external source. It had come from inside the chamber. From the humans, they lay unconscious in their circle, still holding hands even though they could not be aware of it. Their bodies looked the same as before, but her portable scanner told a different story. Their neural patterns had completely changed. The strange spiral signatures were no longer brief flashes. They were constant now, pulsing through every human brain like a second heartbeat. The patterns were identical to the energy found in those ancient ruins. Not similar. Identical. Salith's hands were shaking as she sent her report to the High Council. The response came within minutes. Warships were being dispatched. The Eternal Meridian was under quarantine, and Salith received a direct order: terminate all human specimens immediately. She read the order 3 times. Her whole life, she had followed the commands of the High Council without question. The Valith Dominion had built its power on discipline and obedience. Individual feelings did not matter. Only the Empire mattered. But she did not move to carry out the order instead. She stood in the chamber and watched the unconscious humans. She had dedicated months to studying them. She had seen Marcus Cole care for the others, even when he had no hope. She had watched Alina comfort frightened teenagers. She had observed Tommy try to make people laugh, even in the darkest moments. The Valith did not understand these behaviors. Compassion was inefficient. Hope without evidence was irrational. Yet these traits were exactly what made humans able to do impossible things, and now those humans had become something impossible themselves. Marcus Cole opened his eyes. First, Salith stepped backward without thinking. His eyes had changed. They still looked human, but there was a faint golden light behind them, as if a star was burning somewhere deep inside his skull. He looked at her through the observation glass. He did not speak out loud. He did not need to. His voice appeared directly in her mind. I remember now. The words were calm and warm, like sunlight on water. They carried no threat. But Salith understood immediately that she was no longer the one in control. She had never been the one in control. She had simply been allowed to believe she was. The other humans woke one by one. Alina, Tommy, Yara, all of them with that same faint light in their eyes. All of them connected to each other in a way that had not existed before. They were still themselves. Marcus was still the protective firefighter. Alina still had her kind smile. Tommy still looked young and a little scared. But there was something else inside them now. Something vast and ancient that had been sleeping for billions of years. "What are you?" Salith asked. Her voice sounded small in the ruined chamber. Marcus turned to look at her fully. The others gathered behind him, not threatening, but united. "We are what we always were," he said. The words were in her mind again, clear as spoken language. "We just forgot. Your tests helped us remember," he explained. "Long ago, before the first Valith ancestor had crawled from the mud of their homeworld, the galaxy had been different. It had been young and wild, full of new species finding their way among the stars. Most of those species had been peaceful. They had wanted to explore, to learn, to grow, but not all of them. Some species had chosen a different path. They had become predators of intelligent life. They had built empires on slavery and conquest. They had treated other beings as tools to be used and discarded. The peaceful species had faced a choice: become violent themselves, or find another way. They had found another way. They created the first light. It was not a weapon. It was a safeguard. A fragment of consciousness so powerful that it could stand against any threat. but so patient that it would wait for billions of years until it was truly needed. They seeded it into the building blocks of life across thousands of worlds in hundreds of galaxies. Then they disappeared, leaving only ruins behind. The first light waited. It slept in the genes of countless species, passed down through millions of generations. It was designed to wake only when intelligent beings faced a specific kind of threat, when they were being treated as specimens, as things to be studied and discarded by those who saw themselves as superior. The Valeth experiments had been exactly that trigger. "You wanted to find our limits?" Marcus said. His voice was gentle, almost sad. "We do not have limits. We never did. The first light does not break. It wakes." Salith finally understood what her people had done 3 million years ago. The Neth had started to wake, just like these humans. The Valeth had destroyed them before they could fully awaken, before they could become what they were meant to be. But this time was different. This time, the awakening was complete. "The warships are coming," Salith said. "They will destroy this station and everyone on it." Marcus nodded. "Yes, they will try." Around them, the station began to change. The walls glowed brighter. The metal groaned and shifted. The eternal meridian was being rebuilt from the inside out. Reshaped by an intelligence that understood matter at its most basic level, the 47 humans stood at the center of it all, calm and unafraid. Yara spoke for the first time since her heart had stopped. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of ages. "We did not choose this," she said. "We did not ask to be taken. We did not ask to be tested. We did not ask to wake. But we are awake now, and we will not let others suffer as we suffered." Tommy, young Tommy, who missed his mother, looked at Salith with his glowing eyes. "You could come with us," he said. "You could help us make things better." Salith stared at the boy. No Valeth had ever been invited to join anything by a lesser species. No Valeth had ever been shown mercy by a prisoner. She did not know how to respond. In the distance, sensors detected the approaching war fleet. The greatest military force the Dominion had ever assembled was coming to destroy. 47 humans who had been considered primitive just days ago. Marcus Cole looked toward the stars. "Let them come," he said. "It is time they learned what we truly are." Station pulsed with golden light, and the ancient thing that lived inside them smiled. Admiral Kethvern had commanded the Valeth war fleet for 600 years. He had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. He had reduced civilizations to ash. In all that time, he had never known fear. But as his flagship approached the eternal meridian, something cold settled in his stomach. The station had changed. It no longer looked like Valeth technology. The metal structure had been transformed into something that seemed almost alive. It pulsed with golden light, and strange patterns moved across its surface, like thoughts crossing a vast mind. His sensors could not understand what they were seeing. The readings made no sense. The station was giving off more energy than a star, yet it was not exploding. It was simply existing, calm and patient, waiting for them to arrive. Admiral, his tactical officer, said, "We are in weapons range." Kethvern studied the transformed station on his view screen. His fleet consisted of 12 battlecruisers and 40 support vessels. They carried weapons capable of cracking planets. The High Council had given him clear orders: destroy the station and everything inside it. Leave nothing behind. Open a channel, Kethvern commanded. "I will give them one chance to surrender." The communication link connected. For a moment, there was silence. Then a face appeared on the screen. It was a human male, middle-aged, ordinary-looking. But his eyes glowed with golden light. And when he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Admiral Kethvern." Marcus Cole said, "We have been expecting you." The Admiral leaned forward. "I am here to execute the judgment of the Valeth Dominion. You and all other specimens aboard that station are to be terminated. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." And Marcus smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was the smile of a parent watching a child make a harmless mistake. "For 12 million years," Marcus said, "your people have taken what they wanted. You found species weaker than yourselves, and you conquered them. You found beings who could not fight back, and you made them slaves. You believed the universe was yours to control." He paused. Around him, the other awakened humans gathered. Their eyes all carried the same golden light. "You were wrong," Marcus continued. "The universe is not empty. It is not uncaring. It has protectors. It has guardians. They have been sleeping for a very long time, waiting for the right moment to wake. Your experiments on us provided that moment." He spread his hands. "We are the first light, and we have a message for the Valeth Dominion." Admiral Kethvern had heard enough. He cut the communication with a gesture. "All ships," he ordered, "fire everything." The Valeth warfleet unleashed its full power. Plasma lances that could cut through mountains. Gravity bombs that could crush cities. Missiles that carried payloads of pure atomic destruction. The combined firepower of 12 battle cruisers and 40 support vessels screamed through space toward the transformed station. It was enough force to sterilize a solar system on the station. The awakened humans watched the approaching weapons without fear. Marcus raised his hand. The others did the same, and the weapons stopped. Not exploded. Not deflected. Simply stopped. Thousands of missiles hung motionless in space. Their engines still burning, but their momentum completely halted. Plasma beams froze in place, like rivers of light turned to ice. Gravity bombs floated gently, their destructive power suspended by an invisible force. Admiral Kethvern stared at his tactical display. His mind could not process what he was seeing. "That is impossible," his tactical officer whispered. "On the station." Marcus moved his hand gently to the side. The weapons moved with him. Every missile, every beam, every bomb turned and began drifting back toward the ships that had fired them. They moved slowly, almost peacefully, like leaves carried by a gentle wind. Panic erupted across the Valeth fleet. Crews scrambled to shoot down their own weapons. Defense systems activated. Officers screamed orders, but the returning weapons did not attack. One by one, they simply returned to their launch points and shut down. Missiles settled back into their tubes. Plasma lances powered off. Gravity bombs gently reactivated their safety locks. Nothing was damaged. No one was hurt. The Valeth fleet was completely disarmed without a single casualty. Marcus appeared on every screen in the fleet simultaneously. "We could destroy you," he said. "We could break every ship in your fleet into atoms. We could burn your homeworld to glass. We could end the Valeth Dominion in a single moment." He paused. "But that is not why we exist." The other awakened humans stood beside him, Alina, Tommy, Yara, all the others who had been taken from Earth and treated as specimens. All of them who had every reason to want revenge. None of them looked angry. "The first light was not created as a weapon," Marcus explained. "It was created as a choice. A chance for species like yours to change before it is too late." He looked directly at Admiral Kethvern. "We are offering you that choice now. Release every species you have enslaved. End your experiments on living beings. Learn to exist with others instead of above them." The Admiral's hands gripped his command chair. His entire worldview was crumbling. The Valeth had always believed that power was everything, that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed, that there was no force in the universe that could challenge their supremacy. They had been wrong. "And if we refuse?" Kethvern asked. Marcus's expression did not change. But behind him, the transformed station pulsed with light, and for just a moment, the Admiral saw something in that light. He saw the ghosts of every species the Valeth had destroyed, the Neth and their beautiful cities, countless others whose names had been erased from history. He saw what the first light could do if it chose to. "Then we will do what we were designed to do," Marcus said quietly. "Billions of years ago, when the first tyrants rose among the stars, we will protect those who cannot protect themselves. Whatever that requires." The Admiral looked at his useless weapons, at his trembling crew, at the impossible light surrounding a station that should not exist. He thought about fighting. He thought about dying with honor. Then he thought about his people, about the future they might have if they learned to change. Slowly, he lowered his head. "We surrender," Admiral Kethvern said. "Tell us your terms." On the transform station, Marcus Cole nodded. Behind him, 46 other humans let out breaths they had been holding. They had come to this place as prisoners, as specimens, as things to be studied and discarded. Now, they were something else entirely, and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year had passed since the Valith fleet surrendered above the transformed. Station the galaxy was different now. News of what happened spread faster than anyone expected. Species that had lived under Valith control for millions of years heard about the humans, who stopped a war fleet without firing a single shot. They heard about the first light, about ancient protectors waking from their long sleep. They began to hope. The Valith Dominion still existed, but it was no longer an empire. The High Council had been dissolved. New leaders emerged, leaders who understood that the old ways had nearly destroyed their civilization. Change came slowly, as it always does, but it came. Salith was one of those new leaders. The scientist who had once treated humans as specimens now worked as an ambassador between species. She had seen what the First Light could do, and she had been given a choice: help build something better or be left behind. She chose to help. It was not easy. Many Valith resisted. They could not accept that their empire had been wrong for 12 million years. They could not accept that power was not the only thing that mattered. But every time they looked at the stars, they remembered the golden light that had stopped their weapons like a parent taking toys from a child. Slowly, they began to learn. The 47 awakened humans returned to Earth. They had discussed staying in space, using their powers to help rebuild the galaxy immediately. But Marcus convinced them that Earth needed to know the truth first. Their arrival caused chaos. Governments panicked. Military forces mobilized. Religious leaders argued about what it all meant. For several weeks, it seemed like humanity might tear itself apart trying to understand what had happened to 47 of their people. Then Marcus spoke to the world. He stood before the United Nations, an ordinary man with extraordinary light in his eyes, and told humanity the truth. He explained the first light. He described the ancient beings who had seeded it across galaxies billions of years ago. He talked about the Valith experiments and what they had awakened, and he told humanity what they really were. "We are not a young species," Marcus said. "We are not newcomers to the universe. 4 billion years ago, the first light was placed inside the earliest life on Earth. Every generation since then has carried it forward, passing it down through countless ancestors. It is inside all of us. It has always been inside all of us." He looked at the cameras, knowing that billions of people were watching. We did not choose to be taken. We did not choose to be tested, but we were. And because of that, we woke. Now we understand what we are, and we want to share that understanding with all of you. The awakened humans began to teach. They could not give the full power of the first light to everyone. That power required a trigger, a moment of extreme stress that pushed a person past their limits. But they could teach people how to find the edges of those limits. They could show humanity the potential that had always existed inside them. Schools were built. Not schools of war or conquest, but schools of awakening. People learned meditation techniques that helped them sense the ancient presence sleeping in their cells. Athletes trained not just their bodies, but their connection to something deeper. Scientists studied the first light and found it operating at levels of physics they'd never imagined. Humanity began to change. It happened slowly at first. A doctor who suddenly knew exactly what was wrong with a patient before any tests were run. An engineer who could see the solution to problems that had puzzled experts for years. A child who could calm a crying baby just by being near it. The changes were small, but they added up. Humanity was waking, one person at a time, and across the galaxy, others were waking too. Marcus stood on a hillside one evening, watching the sun set over the city where he had once worked as a firefighter. Alina stood beside him, and Yara and Tommy, who was not so young anymore. They were connected now in ways that went beyond friendship. They shared thoughts and feelings across any distance. They were family in a way that had no word in any human language. "It is starting," Yara said. She was looking not at the sunset, but at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I can feel them. Other species, other worlds. The first light is waking everywhere. She was right. In a distant galaxy, a peaceful species that had been enslaved for 10,000 years was beginning to resist their masters in ways that seemed impossible. On a water world orbiting a red dwarf star, beings of living crystal were discovering they could communicate with each other across entire oceans. Near the galactic core, where no one thought intelligent life could exist, something very old and very patient was opening its eyes for the first time in 1 billion years. The first light was spreading. The safeguard created so long ago was activating across the universe, one species at a time. But Marcus knew there was another side to this awakening. The first light had been created for a reason. Those ancient beings had faced something terrible, something that consumed entire galaxies before it was stopped. They had built the first light as insurance against that darkness ever returning. And in the spaces between galaxies, in the cold void where no stars shone, that darkness was beginning to stir. Marcus had felt it. Brief touches at the edge of his awareness, like cold fingers brushing against the warmth of the first light. The old enemy was not dead. It had been sleeping, just like the first light, waiting for its moment to wake. A great confrontation was coming. Not tomorrow. Perhaps not for centuries. But it was coming. And when it arrived, humanity and all the other awakened species would need to stand together against something that had nearly destroyed the universe once before. Marcus was not afraid. He looked at Alina, at Yara, at Tommy. He thought about the billions of humans on Earth who were beginning to discover what they truly were. He thought about the countless other species across the galaxy who were waking to their potential for the first time. The Valeth had wanted to find humanity's limits. They had wanted to understand what made humans able to do impossible things. They found their answer. Humans had no limits. They never did. They were vessels of an intelligence older than stars, carrying a light that could stand against any darkness. The universe had built them for this purpose. And now, at last, they were ready to fulfill it. Marcus looked up at the stars. "We are not alone," he said quietly. "We never were. And whatever comes next, we will face it together." The first light pulsed gently inside him, inside all of them, warm and patient and eternal. They had been awakened, and they were only the beginning.